As rent spikes, so does the number of evictions. That is leaving thousands of local families in our region with devastating consequences. As families fear being homeless, experts argue apartment complex and their attorneys are putting big cash in their pockets. First Alert 4's Chief Investigator Lauren Traeger continues her investigation, which began last night at 10. Well, tonight, the crisis and those holding power over so many.
Shamika Jones can hardly keep up with her one-year-old, often gliding across the hardwood of their rental home in Bell Fountain Neighbors.
I lost my job on the 13th. I got carjacked on the 23rd.
The single mom to three fell on hard times, but she'd wanted to keep the roof over their head.
You've been making payments that haven't shown up on the ledger.
Correct.
You've been attempting to pay rent.
Correct.
With a rental ledger that didn't reflect her partial payments over recent months, it appeared she was far behind on rent when she wasn't. The property management company and its attorney, Randall Ranker, filed an eviction lawsuit against her. Just 1 month later, she was in court without her own attorney. We watched off camera as Ranker called her into a side room.
He was just like, how much can you pay?
By the time she emerged, she had signed a consent judgment agreeing to pay $2,670, including $400 in attorney's fees and more in court costs, even though the property manager later acknowledged that initial number that sent her to eviction was wrong. She says she felt pressured to sign.
I didn't have no choice but to sign it, so I don't want to get put out. I got 3 kids.
The attorney she faced, Randall Ranker, is being sued by another former tenant, claiming violations of state and federal laws over his attempted eviction. Ranker has denied the allegations.
I think it's awful. I think eviction should be a last resort.
Area experts like Robert Swearingen of Legal Services of Eastern Missouri say Shamika's situation and others is indicative of a much larger issue.
There are some landlords and some attorneys for those landlords that will file as soon as you're late. They might wait 10 days, and then they immediately file that rent and possession lawsuit.
And it's an issue he says we should all pay attention to.
It's extremely costly for all of us for people to be evicted. They end up costing social services, all kinds of other kinds of social problems that we all have to pick up the tab for.
The problem, experts say, is this. The Princeton Eviction Lab has been tracking data all around the country. And in St. Louis City and County alone, they say more than 15,600 tenants faced eviction last year. In some months, filings trended much higher than pre-COVID averages, with evictions disproportionately impacting Black residents and women. Regionally, areas in the city and North County hit hardest. There are fewer mom-and-pop landlords, experts say, with a shift to corporate property management that gives less grace to tenants when they fall a bit behind. And rent overall is going up to a typical $951 a month in the region, out of reach for so many with few options of places to move that charge less.
And they're desperate because they don't know where to go. And we have a real crisis of low-income housing, and it's only going to get worse.
It is an environment ripe, some say, for those looking to turn a profit.
There seems to be a for-profit eviction industry where attorneys and landlords are joining together to quickly sue tenants and then immediately imposing extra late charges, other kinds of junk fees, and attorney's fees. And then using the fact that that amount is owed to pressure tenants into paying exorbitant amounts of money to avoid eviction.
And once in court, most apartments have attorneys on their side. The vast majority of tenants do not. St. Louis City Alderman passed a bill giving tenants there a right to counsel, but it doesn't take effect until the summer, giving apartments and their attorneys, Swearingen says, the upper hand, allowing them to pursue late fees, attorney's fees, and other add-ons.
And then they use that attorney's fee, the fact that you owe it, to pressure you into signing consent judgments.
And once tenants have an eviction on their record, it becomes nearly impossible to find somewhere else to live, a spiral that can lead them right to slumlords.
He had raw sewage in the basement, and he had people living in there and wanted to move more people in.
Experts point to Dara Doherty as an example. First Alert 4 Investigates told you she's accused of allowing people to live in deplorable conditions, even in condemned properties, people who perhaps had no other options. But some eviction attorneys who file dozens, if not hundreds of evictions a month often make no apologies for their work.
Take this guy who represents multiple landlords in St. Louis.
St. Louis attorney Matthew Chase was even featured on John Oliver's Last Week Tonight in June of 2022, joked about for a callousness towards tenants.
Them. Come on. They're too stupid to know what their legal rights are. They shouldn't have signed a contract for $1,000 a month unit for a year.
Ranker, too, has said he doesn't feel bad about what he does, telling the Post-Dispatch in 2016, quote, "I make sure if I buy something, I am sure I'm going to afford it. If you are going to rent a place, make sure you can pay for it." And in a more recent email, he told an attorney, once an eviction has started, he's entitled to collect attorney's fees up front, writing, quote, "Money received is applied first to legal fees and court costs, late fees, other lease obligations, before anything is applied to rent."
This is not the way it's supposed to work. Rent is rent, late fees are late fees. And the courts have made that very explicit.
But Swearingen says it's not true. A tenant, he says, is entitled to get caught up on rent only and not get evicted in rules called pay and stay.
If you're paying rent, it's rent. And that's really important for people to understand.
Say $400 attorney fees plus process server fees.
While we visited, Shamika finally reached her property manager, who said they found her missing payments and she shouldn't be in eviction proceedings at all. But with a current judgment on her record, it may still harm her in the long run.
And it's just real sad because, like, what am I going to do now? What can I do? I got 3 kids that I got to take care of.
Shamika's property management company told me they made a mistake on their end, and they told me she would not be responsible for attorney's fees and court costs, and they are working to get her released from that judgment against her. At last check, though, it was still on her official court record. An attorney for Ranker said they could not comment given the pending litigation against him. Now, if you've got questions about all of this, we have resources for you at firstalert4.com. I'm Lauren Traeger. First Alert 4 investigates.